that remains.
Time to shine! Yoo-hoo!
Right at the blazing sun! Full throttle! Into the shadows. Suntown is only the beginning.
Hello everyone, welcome back. We're going to be talking about Clorinde and Mavuika teams because this is going to be number 3 in my ongoing Mavuika series of videos, and it's also going to be an extension on the Should You Get Clorinde videos, so definitely worth checking that out before you get to this, because it turns out that Mavuika might be actually making Clorinde's non-quicken teams significantly better, to the point where they might actually be on par with Clorinde's quicken teams. So that's of course really, really exciting. It means we get to have more options for the most fun character to play in the game, so we do love that. So we're going to be looking at the effects of Mavuika in Clorinde's Overload, OverVape, and Chaos teams, so definitely stick around for that. But first, don't forget to subscribe, okay? Like I mentioned, this is of course going to be the 3rd in a series of videos looking at various Mavuika teams that I have been enjoying, so this series is going to continue, so hitting that bell icon as well will mean that you're going to be notified of the latest videos on the channel. Alright, without further ado, let's talk about Clorinde and Mavuika, and how Mavuika essentially makes a lot of old school Electro teams suddenly a lot stronger.
Pyroclastic surge!
Starting simple and working our way up, we have a Chevvy Overload team with Clorinde and Mavuika. Now, of course, due to the nature of Mavuika and the fact that she needs a Nightland character, usually, we're rather limited in our final slot being Ororon. Now, this team is alright, and at the end of the day, I kind of ignore what Ororon is actually doing. The only thing I really care about is the fact that his AoE Electro damage is coming from his passive. I haven't actually bothered to level up his talents. The main thing is that he is at some point draining Night Soul though, so I can of course use higher tier Mavuika ults on the regular. Now, without Ororon, well, Clorinde can barely get enough normal attacks out for Mavuika to at least burst on rotation, so that's kind of nice, but it is of course going to be a half power burst, so not that exciting. And if you are using Mavuika's burst right before swapping over to Clorinde in your rotation, then you probably should be using Obsidian Codex on Mavuika, since Clorinde's skill does have a 7.5 second duration, which is only 1.5 seconds longer than the 6 second duration of the Obsidian buff for Mavuika. So that way you can still maintain the crit rates. That's basically it. Team actually does work pretty well, especially in AoE content thanks to our Ororon and Mavuika's abilities. And whilst I am not getting much value at all from TF specifically, which definitely means I'm not getting that much cooldown reduction, it does seem like the team rotation is at least smooth enough where I guess that doesn't really matter, because once you start popping off with Clorinde, once you're done with that, you just swap over to Mavuika and start resetting the entire rotation. Scroll on Ororon does seem to also do the trick as well, both in AoE and single target, and more importantly, you don't even need to use Ororon's ult to make sure that you get the scroll buff on, well, everyone, because it seems like his passive actually does the trick, especially right after Mavuika's Night Soul aligned ult. So we do have that. This of course does give everyone the scroll buff, so great. It's probably still going to be my least favorite Clorinde team, but at the very least, does seem to be working pretty well.
Loaded. Drop your weapons!
Not too far now. Tell me what you see.
Crash from the sky! Full throttle! Ready. Hunt them down. Justice will prevail. Stop him.
He's free.
Final warning. Pyroclastic surge. Try and stop me. Into the shadows. What a disgrace. You asked for it.
Not too far now.
Stop right there. Full throttle.
Alright, let's have a look at OverVape teams. It's time for me to introduce a concept to you known as the Mavuika that buffs everyone. Well, all of the DPSs on the team. Because we're going to be overvaping. What is overvaping? It means we're overloading and vaping simultaneously. Traditionally, Overload Vape teams like Rational were set up in such a way that the Pyro off-fielder, Xiangling, could deal maximum damage by taking the buffs coming from Chevvy and Furina, well, Yelan. Xiangling can of course do a lot of damage. However, this time we're going to be using Mavuika's OverVaping to trigger the scroll set buffs. Recall what the rotation or reactions are with OverVaping. We have Overloading, which involves Pyro reacting with Electro. We have Vaporizing, which involves Pyro reacting with Hydro. And of course we have Electro Charge, where Electro and Hydro react and form a coexisting aura, thus allowing Pyro to react with both simultaneously, which of course gives us Overvaping. In an Overvaping team, Mavuika is triggering the scroll buff for Electro and Hydro because she's reacting with them, but also Pyro, because the scroll set buff also extends to the element that reacts. So that's really, really cool. So in Clorinde's Overvape teams, well, because she doesn't have any off-field Electro damage, the Electro buff will be slightly delayed, but if you're more interested in playing, let's say, Miko Overvape, or dare I say, Ororon Overvape, then the Electro buff should be coming in tandem with the Hydro and Pyro buffs, and you'll probably end up playing Mavuika on-field. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't really looked into that myself. Now, at the very least, in my experience, my Mavuika seems to be unironically doing more damage with the scroll set than if she runs the Obsidian set, at least on the vapes. Once we take into account the overload damage, well, at the present moment, I'm running an attack sand on the scroll set, meaning my overloads are in fact doing significantly less damage. The moment I get a decent EM sand on scroll, I think it's a lock. I think my scroll set Mavuika is going to end up straight up outperforming my Obsidian set Mavuika in a team like this. But Mavuika running scroll does make scroll unnecessary on Yelan because you can't really double dip in that regard. So what you should run on Yelan? Well, you could use Petra, but you're going to need someone to apply some sort of an element, and you're going to have to pick whether it's going to be Hydro or hell, even Pyro, or maybe you use Chlorad's ult in order to do that. Yeah, it's going to get a little bit finicky in that regard. Other support sets like Noblesse could be a solution as well, but for me personally, out of sheer laziness, I'm keeping her on Scroll. There is no reason, except I guess Scroll is the single artifact set that I've got farmed for Yelan at the present moment that actually works pretty well with the Peak Patrol song defense requirements, so yeah, I'm just lazy. But thankfully, Yelan's buffs, when you don't care about the artifact set that she's running, does seem to last the entire rotation of this team, so great. If you don't have Yelan, I'm not sure if Citlali can be of any help. Maybe. You may want to consider building an off-field DPS Citlali at that point for this team. You will have to, of course, forego Furina for either Xingqiu or Yelan. So, Citlali players, feel free to test this out and see how you go. Clorinde seems to be able to make a lot of use out of TF on this team thanks to Electro Charge, so that is definitely making my experience of this team a lot more positive. All of this to say, this is quickly becoming one of my most favorite Clorinde teams, pretty much up there with the Quick Bloom comps.
Which is here and it's time to shine. Shower me with this
Light of the blazing sun! Full throttle! Shoot on sight!
strike a pose.
Pyroclastic surge! Revving loaded! Hear the echoes of the valley!
Apologies. Let the world collide.
Wrath from the sky!
And for the final archetype, let's talk about Clorinde Chaos, which of course is one of the most colorful DPS teams in the game. And yet, this is another team where Mavuika can actually buff everyone. Okay, now in the previous OverVape teams, Mavuika is definitely buffing 3 elements worth of DPS characters on the team. But in Chaos teams, Mavuika is usually buffing at least 3 characters, or 3 elements, but there is an opportunity to buff everyone. This team benefits probably more with Emilie over Nahida due to the lack of a Quicken Aura, and also the fact that we kind of do need to avoid Nahida's overwhelming Dendro application for the most part. So the scroll set does in fact buff Dendro specifically with Burgeon reactions, and burning of course, so Mavuika will excel with that because her orbital strikes 100% target Dendro cores. So that's really good. However, Emilie's Dendro application could still interfere with Hydro auras, namely with Furina, and that could potentially cause rotation problems. An alternative, therefore, is to not use Furina, especially if you're running Emilie and therefore have no healer. Instead, you want to go for Yelan instead. So this is going to be depending on your preference for your team, as well as, I guess, your skill level, of course. You may notice the lack of another Natlan character on the team. We don't have Yelan, we don't have Ororon, we don't even have anyone else except for specifically Mavuika. And under normal circumstances, this would be a problem. But this is a team where we actually are going to be using Mavuika's ult every other Mavuika rotation, which is not actually every other rotation. Let me explain. We're playing TF Clorinde. The rotation, as demonstrated in the footage, hopefully, will depend on, of course, which Hydro character you're using, but let's say you're using Furina. So you start off with Furina, then you go into Mavuika with her skill and then her burst, then you go into Baizhu, then you go to Clorinde, and Clorinde starts popping off, and you can end with her ult. It's entirely optional. Once Clorinde is done, you go back to Mavuika, you just use her skill, and then you start popping off again with Clorinde. The rotation ends when it's time to use Furina's ult again. That's that rotation. So we're fitting Mavuika in twice, right? So I guess the rotation is long-ish, maybe, but either way, we're fitting Mavuika in twice. After the second round with Clorinde, you should be able to restart the rotation again with Furina's ult. So with 2 rounds of Clorinde's normal attacks, plus 2 rounds of Mavuika's skill, yeah, we can use a full power burst with Mavuika. Great. Awesome. It's actually kind of terrifying how well this works. If you're running Yelan with Emilie, probably, then you can probably start with Emilie, then Mavuika, then Yelan, then Clorinde. I don't recommend using Clorinde's ult at that point. And then after she's done, you use Mavuika's skill and then you go back to Clorinde. Once again, we have 2 rounds of Clorinde's normal attacks and Mavuika's skill. Thus, we can actually use full power Mavuika bursts every rotation, right? I do find the Furina Baizhu variant to be a lot smoother to play because Salon Solitaire sticks around for 30 seconds, whereas Yelan's ult sticks around for only 15 seconds, which means it's barely not enough to sustain 2 full Clorinde skills. But the Yelan Emilie variant does mean Mavuika is buffing all of the DPS characters, because Baizhu most of the time is not known for his DPS. So I highly recommend this team, actually. It's a lot of fun to play. And it might be one of those rare non-Natlan teams where Mavuika is absolutely perfectly fine just going crazy every rotation, which happens to be every other Mavuika rotation.
Take quietly now. Game's up. Time's over. Ready. Time to testify.
Rise with the sun!
Loaded. Grow! Make yourselves a move!
Light of the blazing sun!
Ready? Busted. Gotcha. Things are about to get dicey. Into the shadows.
So at the end of the day, the most fun character to play in the game somehow got more fun, which is hilarious, but here we are. Mavuika has been a terrific support for her non-Dendro based teams and of course Clorinde Chaos. So this just further cements my recommendation that after Mavuika and possibly Citlali, if you can somehow still afford to get Clorinde, oh yeah, I 1000% highly recommend Clorinde. You don't even have to play Clorinde in his teams though. You can of course play Cyno, it's a little bit unusual. You could play A, you will run into Resolve stack since Fighting Spirit doesn't equal energy. You could play Miko, you could play Lisa, they might be much more smoother than the previous 2. I do want to do a separate video though on Thundering Dory's raid team though, since I might end up sticking with Obsidian on Mavuika and compare her to, let's say, C2 the higher on that team. But either way, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. How do you feel about Clorinde Chaos and Clorinde OverVape in particular? Because I feel like these 2 teams are going to be really good moving forward with a scroll set Mavuika just buffing the crap out of everyone while still doing some pretty decent damage. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Genshin Impact action, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.